Welcome back, nerds. Fino here with a guide for Ash the Savior, aka Tanelico, aka Summer Morgan. She's a limited 5-star caster and this year's anniversary servant. And as you'd expect from one of those, her hat's filled to the brim with sea magic tricks. At this point, it's common knowledge that her arch-nemesis Summer Castoria is the big-ticket servant for this year, but Ash is no slouch either. The million quartz question is, should you take the detour and get her? Let's find out. Ash's first skill is Fairy of the Rain Clan. At level 10, it's a 50% battery and NP damage effect for herself with some perks for your frontline. 10% party charge per turn and 10 stars per turn. A bulk battery and recurring charge are two very powerful tools for a servant to have at this stage of the game, and they smooth out team building in 90++ encounters, where you need to slam your units together like Mishap jigsaw pieces until their charge values line up. Next we have Charisma of Adversity. It's a party attack buff that gains properties based on how low your party member's health is, capping out at sub 25%. If your party's at full HP, you gain 10 stars instead at the end of each turn. Now, unlike enmity effects that scale according to the exact amount of health you're missing, this buff triggers at particular percentages. The good news is that, unlike a lot of other buffs in this game, additional stacks stay on your party members just in an inactive form. If you qualify after the fact, those stacks activate. Buffs that can retroactively meet their activation requirement are pretty cool, and if anyone gave a shit about Jekyll, they'd give him something similar too. But alas, he gets banished to Garbo Town instead, or as they call it in Fairy Britain, the Cernunnos Pit. Notably, this skill has a short 5-turn cooldown, 4 with the CDR append, meaning that stacking it twice in a fight is quite doable. Tanelico's final skill is Last Resort. Suffocation! No breathing! This is a 50% party-wide battery with NP damage and guts for them too. Suffice it to say that a 50% bulk party battery is unheard of. Something like that would easily break team building since the primary challenge in 90++ encounters is charge management. But if you shit out a golden road to Camelot, no problem, right? Well, they threw in a pretty big drawback. Last Resort has a massive 10-turn cooldown and it starts on cooldown. A 5-turn cooldown. But wait, that's terrible. Your goal is to end most fights in 3 turns and you'd never get a chance to use this in a typical encounter. Unless you're a Buster servant. Spoilers, Ash is exactly that, which means she can lean on Koyan Sky of Light to cheat some turns off this. To a pop. But she also has another way. Memory of Londinium is Ash's Noble Phantasm, and it's an AoE buster attack that preemptively gives her 1 hit of invulnerability. Useful for damage mitigation over a long fight, and usable as a last-ditch defense if she's isolated against an enemy NP. The crazy part, and you'll be familiar with this if you saw my Top 10 Servants of 2025 video, is that this has anti-evil damage. Super effective damage that scales on Ash's NP level. Most servants with NP-based anti-buffs have it either at a fixed magnitude or scaling off overcharge, with the latter making it difficult to hit consistently at full power. In a power budget sense, Ash is in no way penalized for this. Your phone, however, is. If it isn't strong enough, the sheer amount of crap flying on screen is going to make your performance go down the toilet, so have fun with that. At NP1, she starts at 150% anti-evil, which is the default magnitude for most non-scaling effects of this sort. At NP5 though, this number hits 200%. That's equivalent to another servant's Overcharge 5. You get this magnitude every single time. Now you'll still want to overcharge Ash when you can, we'll get to that in a second, but this is an absurdly powerful effect. While this is great from a power budget standpoint, it has terrible implications in terms of your real-world budget, because you want as many NP levels as you can humanly get on this servant. One benefit of Ash having her anti-evil damage scale off her NP level is that it frees up her overcharge effect for something else, a preemptive buster buff and cooldown reduction on Last Resort. Just your 3rd skill, but that's the one you want CDR on the most. This is the mechanism of Ash's salvation, because now you hypothetically don't need 2 Koyanskayas or 2 Oberons, opening up potential multi-core setups. But let's understand what the default is before we get too out there. On release, you have 2 standard single-core arrangements for Ash, one with double Koyan and one with double Oberon. The double Koyan setup unfortunately requires starting charge to work, meaning it's time to dust off first day of filming if you have it, and aerial drive if you don't, or any 50% CE if you lack both. Apex is more relevant for multi-core Ash, so we'll put that to the side for now. On turn 1, you activate her 1st and 2nd skills, plus Koyan's 3rd and 2nd if it's relevant, then you NP. On turn 2, you use both of Koyan Sky's batteries on Ash. Charisma of Adversity will be back up, so use that again. Then your NP. On turn 3, Last Resort will be available from the last turn, so start with that. Then you have a choice. If you have the Atlas uniform equipped, you can use its third skill to turn on Fairy of the Rain Clan and use it for the missing 50%. Otherwise, you'll have to swap in a 50% charger or a cooldown reduction servant. Oberon overshoots the 50% mark, but his damage tools will make him your default option for single core operations. As for cooldown reduction, servants with this effect on the skill tend to be high rarity, so just use whoever you have on hand. If you're rolling on the Summer Melusine banner this year, UDK Barghest has cooldown reduction so you can slap her onto your team if you're trying to bond her up. I'll also note that after his upgrade, which is slated for next year's Khazra drop event, Geronimo gets targeted cooldown reduction on his quick buff, so you can run him in situations where you're min-maxing your party cost. Of course, by that point in time, you'll have a better way of managing Ashe's cooldown situation. But hold that thought. The other standard team you have on release is Double Oberon, which has the advantage of running Black Grail at the cost of a significantly larger gap between your turn 3 damage and your output in the rest of the run. Not an issue for cannon fodder, but if you run into a mixed wave or a particularly big mid-boss, you might have some difficulty. The usual Double Oberon caveat. Now, despite being Double Oberon, you do start with your single Koyan in the front line. Turn 1 begins with Ashe's skill 1 and 2, plus everything Koyan Sky has got. On turn 2, you swap in the other Oberon and use both of their first skills and one of their second skills. The reason this works is because of the 10% you get back from Fairy of the Rain Clan. On turn 3, you use Last Resort and all of your remaining Oberon skills to force the final Noble Phantasm. Boom. Having to choose between Black Grail and Double Koyan single Oberon is a pretty big inconvenience, and in fact, it's the same situation that Arquade is in. Lucky for you, the cure for Ashe is the same as it is for Arquade. Append 5. Next year we get 2 additional Append Skills, and one of them gives a one-time cooldown reduction for each of your skills, with the total number of skills affected being tied to your Append level. Now you might hope this shaves the turn off of Last Resort, but unfortunately it'll still start at 5 turns. What gets reduced is the 10-turn cooldown after you use it for the first time. Pretty damn niche. No, the real value here is in Fairy of the Rain Clan, which has a 7-turn cooldown out of the garage. That's 1 turn short of an unrestricted double Koyan swap. Well, guess what? You shave that 1 turn off and a whole new world of possibilities opens up. Just remember to use this first, especially if you don't plan on putting extra levels into Append 5. Wouldn't want to brick your run by fat-fingering her charisma. You'd make poor Woodwoes jealous. The farming rotation post-Append 5 is pretty straightforward. Just use Ashe's skills whenever you can without wasting charge, then prioritize Koyan's skills. Just remember that you can swap Oberon in and use his first skill whenever you want, even on turn 1. Now we've been talking single core all this time, and it can get you far, especially if you go NP5 level 120. Tonelico really lends herself to that kind of turbo whale playstyle. But realistically, you're gonna need to go multicore at some point, which means playing nice with other attackers and ignoring her admonition to use proper classes and not just throw berserkers at everything. One of the big things you have to worry about with multicore team comps is that you're gonna be down a frontline slot. This means double Koyan is usually out of the question, and given how much Ashe's game plan revolves around cooldown reduction, you're gonna need to use your noggin. Some of the more promising combinations involve servants with overcharge or cooldown reduction. Izumo no Kuni is a single target caster, so in assassin nodes where demonic enemies take precedence over evil ones, it's worth swapping away from a single core Ashe. Now the catch is that a good number of demonic servants are also evil. Not all of them, there are quite a few goods and neutrals, but unfortunately most demonic assassins and berserkers are evil. The only servants outside of that strike zone are Kichi Hogan and Summer Ibuki. Next up is Maid Alter. Oh, I'm sorry, did I say promising candidates? No, this is one of the worst 5 stars in FGO, and not a servant I recommend using at the moment. But she does have a very funny interaction with Tonelico. Maid Alter's cooldown reduction skill has the effect of dealing damage to its target, so it can actually help set up the next tier of Tonelico's missing health buff. But the catch is that it raises its target's max health by 5 times that amount on the following turn, so you can gain and then lose one of your attack buffs. Very strange stuff. UDK Barghest gives everyone except herself 1 turn of cooldown reduction, and she can turn into a single target archer. The one thing you need to watch out for with her is that she heals the servants she's buffing, so you can end up losing damage if you wait too long to activate this, so use it as soon as you're able to. Now for some overcharge options, Kama notably reduces the max health of her target, which can make it easier to hit some of the thresholds for Ashe's charisma. Each point of damage you take will be a larger percentage of your total health pool. Some other candidates include Altera the Santa, the Trunk Sisters, Uesugi Kenshin, Summer Da Vinci, Suburbanian, Summer Jufu, Zerktoria of course. Another very interesting partner is Phantasmoon, who as a pretender is geared to take fights that Tonelico can't, and she's also got anti-evil, so the two work in tandem quite nicely in mixed class nodes. I've avoided listing AoE servants in this section because Multicore Doctrine typically calls for one AoE and one single target attacker. But if you're in an oddball situation, or you're stacking your backline for a boss fight, you do have some interesting alternatives. Takasuki Shinsaku has a party buster buff, and both overcharge and cooldown reduction, so he can up the timetable on Last Resort quite a bit. Morgan, Himiko, and Koyan Sky have Darkness assist in terms of overcharge, while Summer, Ibuki, and Edison have cooldown reduction at their disposal. Further in the outfield, you can abandon both cooldown reduction and overcharge to fit a square peg through a round hole. Ruler Moriarty and Avenger Nitocris can both apply the evil alignment to enemies, giving Ash a way to leverage her super effective damage against unsuspecting do-gooders. Of course, the opportunity cost of running alignment changers is pretty high, so I'd consider this more of a novelty than anything else. Now here's some miscellany. Ash is yet another servant with an anti-berserker append skill. Valuable as it is, I wouldn't prioritize it over the cooldown reduction or starting charge appends. We've talked about CDR at length, but the starting charge merits some explanation. It's largely useless for single core applications, but immensely valuable in multi-core. Sometimes you're stuck pandering to the needs of your single target attacker, and if they're arts, you can bet Castoria's gonna be there too. Her spread charge is 30%, so being able to fit an extra 20% onto that can get you off the ground without making your skill allocations too awkward. Overcharge CEs like Inverted Rain of Mud and Apex are usable and tactically relevant, but be aware that your usual goal is to either run Black Grail or route your craft essence out entirely, in favor of an event or Mana Prism CE, so in strategic terms, they're strong but not ideal. For command codes, consider some of the anti-evil ones like Sparrowzin's Proprietress or Anti-Magecraft Armor Rocket Launcher. That second one's coming in the Mahoyo crossover next year. The rationale behind this is that Ash's anti-evil damage is only on her Noble Phantasm. If you need to double tap with her face cards, then extra sources of anti-evil are going to come in handy. One last bit of skullduggery is that you can hypothetically just not give Ash any health foes. This keeps her max health down and makes it easier for her to hit low health percentages and take advantage over charisma buffs. Of course, this is all theoretical and remarkably distasteful, like a witch hat full of clam chowder. I don't recommend doing this, and I doubt you guys would have the stomach for it anyway. The Gimped Health or the Hat Chowder. This video isn't meant to be a comprehensive list of Ash's strategies, and there's some very gimmicky shit you can do that's funny, but not consistent or super practical. The rest I'll save for the Poor Friend guide, so keep an eye out for that once we're closer to her release. A lot of stuff I want to talk about, and not enough time. Ash the Savior is a remarkably powerful servant that demands sacrifice. The opportunity cost of rolling for a servant so close to Zerctoria, the literal cost of going the distance for NP5, the brainpower cost of trying to multi-core with her, and the patience to save coins for a cooldown append. But if you ring those bells, then Ash becomes strong enough to move heaven and earth. I cannot understate the impact of an anti-buff scaling off NP level and access to multiple 50% batteries. She's undoubtedly one of the most powerful servants this year, number 4 by my reckoning. If you're willing to take all those steps I listed, then I highly recommend Tonelico. Now, are you willing to go whole hog for Summer Morgan? Gonna leave her in the lurch to go for Summer Castoria instead? Or are you gonna greed for both? I'm kinda leaning towards that last option, but the Paper Moon banners were pretty brutal for me, so I may need to get creative in the meantime. Now at this point, you guys know I stream on the weekends, but what if you missed one and you want to catch up? Well, I have a VOD channel, Fino Streams, which is linked in the description. You can catch all-time greats, like that time I played a gacha game that was a really shit picture book of scenes from its source anime. And by that time, I mean it happened last week. Awful stuff. I'd recommend it. The VOD, not the game.